Societies differ, but the people who live within them share basic needs. From food and shelter to explanations about the meaning of life, we turn to social institutions to meet these needs. According to sociologists, every society has functional requirements that it must fulfill if it is to survive. These requirements include replacing members, socializing new members, producing and distributing goods and providing services, preserving order, and offering a sense of purpose. Social institutions exist to fulfill these requirements. Social institutions don't stand alone. They interact to meet our needs. As a result, they play a key role in our lives.
Every day of our life is spent traversing through the domains of the different institutions. From the time that one gets up in the morning until the time that they go to bed, they are moving through various institutions. And these institutions act to structure our lives, and they act to give meaning to different aspects of our lives. And they provide guidelines for behavior and for planning.
Each one of those social institutions is tied together by a culture, a unique set of beliefs about how the world is and a set of values about what ought to be that ties it together.
Social institutions provide anchors and continuity to society, but they are not static. They must respond to challenges within a society.
The interesting thing about institutions is that they tend to be durable. They tend not to change very much, but at the same time, paradoxically, they do change over time, subject to the pressures of the societies which they serve.
We rely on social institutions for the food on our tables, the water we drink, the power that lights and heats our homes, our emotional support, and our spiritual inspiration. All social institutions share common characteristics. These include groups, roles, values, norms, and the fulfillment of needs. These characteristics can be found in every social institution, from economics to religion. Looking closely at religion, we see the common characteristics of a social institution, including the fulfillment of needs. Members of society have concerns about life after death and the meaning of suffering and loss. Religion has functions that meet these needs.
As an institution, religion furnishes people with guidance in areas that no other institution chooses to deal with.
Another thing that religion does is creates a moral community. And so we rally around and we say, men ought to be honest. It just makes for a better community if we are honest with each other. Religion is and continues to be a powerful force of social control.
Now we are here in your presence and we come to praise your mighty name.
I think the basic needs that are met by the institution of religion have to do with the need of individuals and societies to find some systematic, organized way to express their faith. Faith being a sense that they are not alone in the universe, that there is a divine being and they want to relate to that being.
We want this family to be a life with them.
Institutions are made up of groups that serve the needs of society. Groups found within religion include congregations, synagogues, denominations, and charitable organizations.
Todos juntos vamos a proclamar el gloria y decimos, gloria a Dios en el cielo.
Within these groups, there are specific roles that guide the behaviors of each member. Some of the roles within religion include those of rabbi, priest, minister, worshiper, and missionary.
If you just walk into any religious building, temple or a cathedral or a mosque, you'll find the people up front that appear to be in charge and doing things will tend to be well-trained and professional. But there are a lot of support roles for this. The choir, they're the altar boys, the people who light the candles and carry the Bibles, the men and women in some places who usher, who serve communion, who take the money, the people who keep the buildings going, who handle the finance, who plan the dinners, and for that matter, prepare the communion services.
All social institutions have values. Religion teaches specific values that encourage us to live our lives according to the tenets of our faith.
One of the major values in religion, I think, would be social justice. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. The values of compassion, kindliness, and benevolence.
We ought to respect the property of other people. We ought not to commit violence against others. And so this religion really helps create these moral communities where we seem to feel very comfortable and makes life livable.
Norms are common to all social institutions. In religion, such norms might include contributing money and attending worship services. Norms also provide guidance and set the parameters of our behavior.
Most religions have norms against recreational drug use and certainly against hard drug use. Most religions would have rules against illegal behavior such as fraud or burglary or assault or whatever the case may be. I think most religions have pro-family rules that say husbands and wives should treat each other with respect and kindness, that child abuse and spouse abuse is inappropriate.
In addition to sharing common characteristics, all social institutions face challenges as they adapt to social changes. This is certainly true of religion.
I think the biggest challenge is maintaining a viable religion in an American society in light of the growth of science and the fear of secularization, that science will simply provide all of the answers. We don't need religion anymore.
The other thing that is really coming on the scene now is a renewed emphasis on mixing politics and religion. It's a political issue in congressional elections and presidential debates and more local things for that matter, school boards and the issue of evolution and sex education and all kinds of things.
Cuerpo de Cristo.
There's continued controversy over the role of women in religion in the world today, and particularly in the U.S.
As we've watched women move into the labor force and the whole women's rights movement, religion has had to keep pace. And so you've had religions who, in their theology, have had to rethink and redefine the roles of men and women.
Religion, like all social institutions, functions to address the needs of a society. The institution of religion is not static, but adapts in order to face the challenges presented by social changes. Social institutions are stable structures that enable society to function. All social institutions have common characteristics, but within any one institution, there may be variations in how those characteristics manifest themselves. A good example of this is the social institution of family. In America, there exists a rich diversity of family structures. But each structure shares the common characteristics of social institutions: groups, roles, values, norms, and the fulfillment of needs. Values and roles may vary between family structures, but the basic fulfillment of needs is common to all families.
Family is the most important institution we have. It is our first shelter, our first nest, and it is the incubator that we're in as we develop our sense of reality, and it affects everything else.
It's often referred to by many individuals as being the kind of basic institution. It provides the basic kind of needs and tasks and goals that society really needs to survive.
Traditionally, the nuclear family, consisting of two parents and their children, was considered to be the typical American family structure. Today, many sociologists think of the nuclear family as more inclusive. They argue that the term should include family types such as the single-parent family. The single-parent family is the family structure that is increasing in numbers in American society. Why?
We see single-parent families that are a result of divorce. We see single-parent families that are a result of spouse abuse. And I think economic pressures sometimes have contributed to the rise in single-parent families. And then also, I think the stigma that was once attached to being a single parent no longer exists in our society.
The common characteristic of roles exists in all family structures. Obviously, how these roles are carried out differs greatly depending on the family structure.
Till the one day when the lady met this fellow, and they knew that it was much more than a hunch.
Another family structure is the blended family.
That's the way they all became the Brady Bunch.
A blended family is a yours, mine, and ours. With a blended family, you can have the husband's children from a previous relationship, the wife's children from a previous relationship, and then any children that they may have of their own.
Our increasing life expectancy also contributes to the number of blended families.
As our society has found more and more people living longer, we have remarriages, not in the sense of the younger people who have divorced and remarried, but people who have lost their spouses and they find someone and they remarry. So it sets up a whole new phenomena in the study of the family.
All family structures share the common characteristic of groups, such as relatives and kinship groups. Within a blended family, these groups would likely expand because of the many possible combinations of relatives from each new family member. The racially and ethnically mixed family is another structure that is no longer unique in American society.
Marriages between individuals of different ethnic groups and different racial groups are a growing phenomenon, and I think that's one of the reasons that sociologists are interested in them.
Our ethnic heritage provides us with unique cultural beliefs and values. When people with different heritages join together in a family, they must work on reconciling differing value systems.
Racially and ethnically mixed families bring different sets of values together. Not necessarily that these values are going to clash, but it means that society is blending in a whole new way.
The intergenerational family, in which several generations live in the same household, is another family structure that is increasing in number.
We're seeing, for a variety of reasons, a lot more kind of three-generation families. A lot more households where young children who have grown up and left maybe got married, marriages don't work out, or some cases they're not even married and they have jobs that don't work out and they move back home. There's cases of where older parents who are at a time in their life where they need more assistance may move back in with their children.
Oh, you're so high.
Intergenerational families provide a different dimension in how we look at the characteristic of norms. Over time, norms may vary slightly from generation to generation. But how would the continuity of norms be affected in a family where 3 or 4 generations are living together? The number of families headed by teenage parents, another family structure, is increasing in the United States. For many people, this is a cause for concern.
Families where the teenage parents are the heads of the household are a great concern because they sometimes lack the maturity to handle the stressful situations in which they are placed.
It's hard to raise kids, even with 2 parents, and doubly hard when there's one, and triply hard when you're young and you haven't your kids yourself.
Teenage mothers in particular find themselves in situations where they find their education just coming to a screeching halt with the birth of that first child, and it's very, very difficult for them economically to ever get ahead.
Isn't this so fun?
Same-sex marriages have been legalized in some Scandinavian countries. But in the United States, such marriages are not yet legal. But same-sex living arrangements do exist and serve the same functions as other family structures.
There are partnerships between gay and lesbian people who live together and raise children together. And I think this is becoming increasingly acceptable.
Right.
I don't think we yet have a vocabulary to kind of name the variety of complex and subtle relationships that we have with each other.
A social institution is a stable structure, flexible enough to allow variations within it. The diversity of family structures and living arrangements is a testament to the stability of the family as a social institution. The social institution of economics is the backbone of every modern society. Without the provision of services and the production, distribution, and consumption of goods, industrialized societies would find it difficult to survive.
The social institution of economics is so critical to the rest of society for the obvious reasons, first and foremost, that that's the system through which we provide the basic fundamental needs for food, shelter, clothing, and so forth. But we also find that that establishes market links between countries around the world, and it establishes other kinds of relationships.
All members of society are affected by economics.
Economics influences the daily social life mainly through consumption. For example, going to the grocery store, buying groceries, going to the gas station, buying gasoline, figuring out the family budget, trying to anticipate clothing purchases. Just about everything that is purchased has economic consequences for the household budget and for how well off a family is.
All social institutions must respond to social change, and economics is no different. For instance, after the Second World War, the economy of the United States became much more global in nature.
I think that the economic system has served as a major transporter for American culture and American values. The idea of creating a culture of consumption around the world has served as a major vehicle by which we export everything from McDonald's to Walmart to other aspects of our culture.
What the United States tends to sell the most of globally is high-end intellectual capital kinds of products. Films, academic research, scientific research, products that require a lot of research and development, drugs, high-end kinds of goods.
Expanding global trade, or globalization, presents a major challenge to the social institution of economics.
The entire world is being pulled into an economic system of a global market. This means that some countries who may not necessarily be ready or able to compete are being forced to. They're being forced to rely on international trade and competition, whether they're able to or not.
So typically when you enter an international trade agreement, the developed countries already have quite a head start in factories, infrastructure, education of their workforce, versus underdeveloped countries that don't. And that difference tends to amplify as trade between the countries grows.
What are the positive and negative effects of globalization on the United States?
This expanding global economy has affected us both positively and negatively. Positive aspects of that, of course, for consumers is that you have the availability of things from all over the world, as well as lowered costs, so accessibility is there. The flip side of that, of course, is that it may mean dispossessed workers, it may mean downsizing of corporations, and of course there are the ethical concerns regarding the exploitation of people working in sweatshops in various parts of the world.
Globalization is a movement that seems to be a steamroller that is producing more and more inequality in the world, more and more environmental degradation in the world, more and more injustice in the world, more and more poverty in this country as well as other parts of the world, much more elsewhere, and it seems to be unstoppable.
So part of it is maintaining equity so you don't get a large asymmetry in who does well and who doesn't. And I think the other challenge is really one of coordinating activities across boundaries.
Other issues regarding globalization that affect the United States include health and the environment.
Even though Mexico may have different environmental laws than we do, once they start manufacturing things there, does some of what happens in Mexico come over the border in terms of acid rain or other kinds of contaminants falling out on our borders? So holding them to similar kinds of standards globally. And the reverse may be true too. We may have a drug or a chemical that we use here that we consider to be safe, but that another country, say Canada, who's also a trading partner, would not consider to be safe.
The changing nature of technology also presents a challenge. New technologies demand new and innovative responses in the expanding global economy.
For instance, the rise of robotics and the way that that has cut costs. You develop new innovative styles and ways of developing everything from automobiles to communication devices to computers to everything else.
It's a whole set of technologies that allow us to better expand our cognitive abilities. Some of that is expressed in the biotechnology industry, new cancer drugs, new growth drugs, new drugs to help with diseases. All of that is great advances. I think the other kind of advances are really in information technologies, things that won't be affecting us physically, but things that we will interact with in our world.
New technologies, of course, have had both good and negative effects on workforce demands. On one side, for instance, Ford Motor Company now uses 6 workers to do the work that it once took 104 workers to accomplish back in 1910.
It's lowered the cost of production. It's eliminated some of the most dangerous jobs, some of the most threatening jobs for workers.
On the downside, a large number of workers have now lost their jobs, and we're seeing the increased movement of technologies into other parts of the world, which is causing a number of American workers to no longer have jobs.
I think robotics have, in fact, supplanted some jobs in the economy, but our economy has adapted very well. So while we've lost jobs to robots, we've created many, many new jobs.
People are going to be forced to be very innovative. which may involve everything from retraining and re-education for new jobs and new opportunities for the future to very entrepreneurial type people who may come up with, new inventions all the time.
Like all social institutions, economics is critical to the continuation of society, and it constantly faces challenges in a changing world. How economics adapts to globalization and new technology will determine its ability to generate products and provide services that are essential to everyday life. We rely on social institutions to meet our essential needs. Religion addresses our questions about life's meaning and provides spiritual inspiration. Through a diversity of structures, the family gives us the values, roles, and emotional support critical to the development of our social selves. And economics enables us to produce the items and provide the services that are critical to the day-to-day lives of our global society.